He's one of the most talked about kids in America, yet his life is still a mystery. Barron Trump grew up in a world most of us can't even imagine, walking the halls of the White House while the world watched his every move. But what do we really know about him? Why has he stayed so silent when every other part of his family seems to dominate the headlines? And how has he balanced privilege with privacy? Stay with us because by the end of this video, you'll not only understand more about Barron Trump's life today, but also gain a deeper perspective on what it means to grow up in the shadow of fame and power. Plus, we've uncovered some surprising details about his path forward that most people have no clue about. Curious? Let's get started as we unravel the story of Barron Trump and how his life has shaped him into the young man he is today. Keep watching. It's not just about privilege and politics, it's about the human side of a very public figure. And trust us, the final section holds something you won't want to miss: a question about Barron's future that could change how you see his entire story. Imagine being just 10 years old and moving into the most famous residence in the world. For Barron Trump, the White House wasn't just a workplace for his father, it was his home. While other kids his age were playing at parks or riding bikes around the neighborhood, Barron was adapting to life under constant surveillance, with secret agents ensuring his safety. But what was life really like behind those gates? Barron was the first presidential child in decades to live full-time in the White House since John F. Kennedy Jr., which meant his every step carried both historical significance and relentless attention. He played in rooms that were once occupied by world leaders and attended school under the watchful eyes of the media. Yet, his mother, Melania Trump, made it her mission to create a sense of normalcy. She was famously protective, ensuring Barron had a private, structured upbringing despite their very public life. From setting boundaries with the media to keeping his personal milestones out of the spotlight, Melania worked hard to shield Barron from the intense glare of public scrutiny. But even with those efforts, the unique experience of growing up in the White House shaped Barron in ways most of us can only guess at. How did this unusual childhood prepare him, or maybe even challenge him for the next phase of his life? That's where things get even more intriguing. And in the next section, we'll talk about how Barron balanced his education and interests while dealing with the pressures of being Donald Trump's son. Trust me, this isn't just another story about privilege, it's a closer look at the human side of a life lived under extraordinary circumstances. Stick around, you won't believe what comes next. While the world speculated about his every move, Barron Trump was quietly focusing on something most people overlooked: his education. Throughout his time in the White House, Barron attended some of the most prestigious schools, first in New York and later in Washington, D.C. But beyond the textbooks, there's always been curiosity about who Barron is behind the headlines. What does he enjoy? What kind of future might he envision for himself? Barron's interests have been the subject of speculation, but a few glimpses have come through. Standing at over 6 feet tall by his early teens, many speculated he might have a future in basketball or another sport. And yet, he's managed to keep a remarkably low profile, with little confirmed about his hobbies or ambitions. Some reports suggest an interest in technology, sparking theories about a potential career in engineering or programming. But growing up as Donald Trump's son brings its own challenges. With his father's political and business legacy casting a long shadow, how does someone like Barron carve out his own identity? It's a question that has followed him for years. Even his mother, Melania, once stated her priority was ensuring Barron had the space to grow into his own person without being defined solely by his last name. And while he's been spotted at public events or family gatherings, there's always an air of mystery. Barron doesn't seek attention, and perhaps that's what makes his story even more fascinating. The world knows so little about him, yet he remains a topic of endless intrigue. But Barron's life isn't just about what's been seen, it's also about what's next. How did leaving the White House change things for him? And what is his life like today, away from Washington's spotlight? Keep watching, because the next section reveals the surprising ways Barron has transitioned to a quieter, more private life and what it might mean for his future. When the Trump family left the White House in January 2021, it marked the end of an extraordinary chapter in Barron Trump's life. For the first time in 4 years, he stepped away from the constant attention that came with being the youngest child of a sitting president. But transitioning from life in the most famous house in the world to something more private isn't as simple as packing your bags. The Trump family relocated to Florida, settling in Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's iconic estate. For Barron, this move symbolized a fresh start. While Mar-a-Lago is no ordinary home, it offered a more secluded environment where he could continue his education and focus on his personal growth. Unlike Washington, D.C., where political reporters kept a close watch, Florida provided a certain degree of distance from the public eye. Reports indicate that Barron resumed his schooling at an exclusive private academy, one known for its rigorous curriculum and emphasis on individual development. Here he could blend in more, though being 6'7" as a teenager likely makes him hard to miss. Still, the shift away from Washington's scrutiny seemed to provide him with an opportunity to explore his interests in a quieter setting. What's remarkable is how carefully the Trumps have worked to protect Barron's privacy during this phase. His mother, Melania, has continued to shield him from unnecessary attention, ensuring he can experience something resembling a normal teenage life. But even in Florida, Barron remains a figure of intrigue. How does he navigate the weight of his family's name while living in a world that expects so much from him? And what might this quieter chapter of his life reveal about his path forward? In the next section, we'll look deeper into the challenges and opportunities that come with carrying the Trump legacy and how it might shape Barron's future. What will his role in the family or even the world be in the years to come? You'll want to stick around, because the possibilities might surprise you. Being a Trump isn't just a name, it's a brand, a legacy, and for Barron Trump, an unshakable part of his identity. While his father, Donald Trump, commands global recognition as a businessman and former president, Barron has lived under the weight of that reputation since birth. But what does it mean to grow up as the youngest member of one of the most influential and polarizing families in the world? Barron's relationship with his father has always sparked curiosity. Donald Trump has spoken publicly about his pride in Barron, describing him as a good boy and hinting at his impressive intellect. Yet, unlike his older siblings, Barron has stayed entirely out of politics and business. Whether this is by choice or design remains unknown, but it raises an interesting question: could he one day step into the spotlight, carrying on his family's name in a completely different way? But it's not just about expectations from within the family. The public also plays a role in shaping Barron's life. To some, he represents the continuation of the Trump dynasty. To others, he's simply a teenager trying to live his life. This duality of being both a symbol and a private individual creates a unique challenge. Barron must navigate his teenage years under the shadow of a name that opens doors but also attracts scrutiny. Yet, there's also freedom in his quiet approach. Barron hasn't embraced social media or sought public attention, which means the world knows very little about his personal ambitions. Could this be a sign that he's carving out his own path, one separate from politics or business? Or is he waiting for the right moment to step forward? The future for Barron Trump remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the Trump legacy will always be a part of him. How he chooses to carry it or redefine it will be a story worth watching. And speaking of redefining expectations, the next section delves into the unique challenges Barron faces as he works to find his own identity in a world that already thinks it knows him. Keep watching, you won't want to miss what's next. For most teenagers, growing up comes with challenges figuring out who you are, making mistakes, and slowly finding your place in the world. But for Barron Trump, those typical struggles are amplified by his unique circumstances. Growing up as the son of a former president means living under a microscope, with expectations and pressures most people can't imagine. The weight of being a Trump isn't just about the name, it's about the spotlight that follows him everywhere. Every public appearance, every photo, and even the smallest detail about his life is analyzed, discussed, and shared across the globe. That kind of attention can be overwhelming, especially for someone still figuring out their own identity. But despite this, Barron has managed to stay grounded, or as grounded as one can be in his position. His parents, particularly Melania Trump, have made it clear that his well-being is their priority. Melania has often spoken about shielding Barron from the public eye, ensuring he has space to grow and make his own choices. One of the biggest challenges Barron faces is the pressure to live up to the expectations set by his family. With siblings who are prominent in business and politics and a father known worldwide, finding his own path is no small task. Will he follow in their footsteps, or will he take a completely different direction? The answer remains unclear, but it's a decision only he can make. Yet, Barron's story is also about resilience. Despite the scrutiny and challenges, he continues to move forward, navigating his teenage years in a way that allows him to balance privacy with his public reality. In the final section, we'll talk about why respecting Barron's privacy is not just important, it's essential. We'll also explore the one question about his future that might change how you think about his life entirely. Stick around, you'll want to hear this. As much as the world may want to know more about Barron Trump, it's crucial to remember one thing: he's still a young man, not a public figure by choice. While his last name may draw attention, Barron's story is one of a teenager growing up in extraordinary circumstances, and that's why respecting his privacy matters. The fascination with Barron isn't surprising. His quiet demeanor, his towering height, and his rare appearances all add to the mystery. But behind the curiosity is a young person trying to find his own way in a world that often defines him by his family, rather than his individuality. Allowing Barron the space to explore who he is, free from constant judgment or intrusion, is not just kind, it's necessary. His mother, Melania Trump, has long championed this idea. She's consistently emphasized that Barron deserves to grow up away from unnecessary public scrutiny. In a world that so often crosses boundaries, her stance is a reminder of the importance of protecting childhood, even in the most high-profile families. But the real question is, what does Barron want for his future? Will he step into the spotlight on his own terms, or will he choose a quieter path? While the answers aren't clear now, one thing is certain: he has the potential to chart a life that is entirely his own. As we wrap up, here's something to think about. Barron's story isn't just about privilege or politics. It's about the human side of fame, the struggle for identity, and the universal desire to be understood for who we truly are. And here's a challenge for you: what do you think Barron's next chapter will look like? Could he redefine what it means to carry the Trump legacy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this video made you think differently about Barron's life, share it with someone who might feel the same. Stories like his remind us of the power of empathy and understanding in a world that often forgets to show either. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most fascinating stories are the ones still being written.